Chapter 7. Breaking Out. Royal training ran for over an hour, and Red was exhausted by the end. In addition to the look, they practiced aloofness, disdain, and more practically table setting. Now Red reluctantly stared down that evening's homework, which she'd had no chance to do. She was doodling in the margin of a worksheet on riddles, trying to decipher a particularly tough clue, when someone hit the sill of her open window. Red jumped, knocking her books off the desk. Her bedroom was in the highest tower of the castle. As she stood frozen, she heard rustling and the sound of whispers. Red grabbed a spare croquet mallet from her closet and held it over her shoulder like a baseball bat. She tiptoed over to the sill just as another object sailed past her head and into the room. It was a shoe, a rather muddy shoe. Red snatched it up and squinted into the darkness outside the window. Croquet mallet at the ready. Whatever she expected to see, it certainly wasn't Chester and another boy whom Red didn't recognize, clinging for dear life to the thick ivy that grew over the tower next to Red's room. "I'm going to need that back," Chester said, nodding at the shoe. "What the clubs are you doing here?" Red hissed. Chester grinned his signature grin. "Told you I'd show you how to break out. Well, here we are." "Who's we? Who is that?" "Oh, that's Ace," Chester said. "Homeschool friend." The boy below him waved a hand, half shrouded in ivy and darkness. Red shook her head and dropped the shoe on the windowsill. "This is not a good idea." "It so is. Ace and I climbed all the way up here, and for the most part, it's—" He shook the branch of the ivy on which he stood. "Pretty sturdy." "Someone's going to see you. Then we'd better hurry." He smiled at her wickedly and started back down with the other boy in his stocking feet. Red guessed his other shoe had fallen somewhere below. She groaned, glancing back at her bedroom door and then to the unfinished homework. Her mother was probably already in for the night, doing her daily affirmations. "Everyone thinks you're the best. You have power over all of Oridon. Heart-shaped hairstyles are very in this season and every season." Red had snuck out many times, but never with other people. She'd always been alone. She tied Chester's laces in a loop, hung the shoe over her wrist, and climbed onto the windowsill. The ivy-covered tower was only a foot or two away, but such a wide gap felt like a long distance to cross. There were other ways out of the castle, secret passages that Red had used before for the purpose of avoiding her mother that didn't risk a fall to her death. But she didn't think Chester would appreciate hearing about those now. Red glanced down, which was a terrible mistake. The hedge maze seemed to warp before her eyes. She could just make out the cave-like entrance to the castle's underground tunnel system next to it. Rumor had it that the tunnels were once used for seamless deliveries during balls and tea parties. Now the cavern was adorned with murky rainwater and cobwebs, and it seemed to be spinning. Red grabbed the side of the window for support. "It's okay," Chester yelled from somewhere beneath her. "You can make it, no problem." "What have I missed?" Red snapped. "It's not like you can catch me." "Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Come on, I'll count you down." Red closed her eyes and took a deep breath of the night air. 3, Chester called. 2, 1. And she jumped. Her first attempt at balcony parkour, graceful and fleet-footed, and in a matter of a few seconds she was safely on her way to the ground with the rest of them. Chester offered his hand, and she jumped the last few feet. "I did it," she whispered, heart thrashing in her chest. She felt very giddy. "You did," Chester smiled, took his shoe back, and turned to the other boy. His hair was jet black and curly, and maybe it was the adrenaline still coursing through Red's veins, but his hazel eyes seemed to sparkle in the soft light spilling from the castle windows. "Red, meet Ace. He's always up for a little fun, so I thought he'd be a good influence." "You handled that ivy like a pro," Ace said, grinning and shaking Red's hand. As he did, a few playing cards slipped out of his sleeve. "Whoops," he said. "Those are for later." "Ace is a bit of a card shark," Chester winked. "Nice to meet you," Red said breathlessly. She suddenly conscious of her flyaway hairs and raggedy leather jacket. What if her mom was right and she did look like a ragamuffin? She smoothed them both down and plucked an ivy leaf from her braid. "How on earth did you get through the maze?" "Well," Chester said, "I don't want to admit it, but we've been out here for like 3 hours. It took us forever." "How did you know which window was mine?" Chester laughed nervously. We didn't know that either, but there weren't many other options, and it happened to be a lucky guess. We were worried it was your mom's room at first, all the heart decor, you know, but when we were closer, it looked like someone our age slept there." "The heart decor wasn't really my idea," Red grumbled. "The whole castle was covered in it. She didn't like that her room could be mistaken for her mother's, and she was a little embarrassed that they'd seen it. She thought particularly of the mermaid band posters that plastered her closet door. But at least they had seen something in it that told them it was hers." "So what's the plan?" she asked. "No plan," Ace shrugged. "Breaking you out was the main thing. Now we can relax." "Well, I should probably show you out of this maze before it gets dark," Red said. They went along quickly, with Red making expert, decisive turns as they slipped through the hedges. Soon they were out in the royal woods to the east of the castle, near the fork in the path where Red and Chester had parted yesterday. Red had walked these trails many times before, but somehow it was now tinged with a kind of magic and excitement. She was out when she wasn't supposed to be, which also always gave her a clandestine joy. "Good job," Chester gave her a high five. The three sat down near the trunk of a tum-tum tree, its branches swaying in the evening breeze. "Thanks, Chester. I needed that," Red said, sitting cross-legged and leaning back on her hands. "You know, it's too bad. All the other kids in Wonderland are missing out on shenanigans like this. They're a bunch of rule followers." Chester raised his eyebrow. "All of them?" Red sighed. "Pretty much. You guys are the only ones I've met who aren't." "I've never been a rule follower," Ace said, picking at a bit of grass and shuffling the deck of cards from his sleeves. Even though they were in the woods, the lawn was still mowed and well kept, neat and orderly. "But then, I've never gone to one of these royalty-run schools. Maybe it'd be a different story if I did." "I guess they do kind of hammer it into us," Red said, mouth shut, ears open. That was the second thing they taught after the War of the Roses. She thought of the little boy at the garden party who had been brave enough to steal a tart. Did he have something the others didn't? Or did that rebellious impulse exist in all the Wonderland kids? "I've been sneaking out forever, even without your help," Red said, thinking aloud. Do you think the others actually want to do stuff like that? Would they, if they had the chance?" Chester traced patterns in the grass with a stick. "They'd have to be pretty motivated. Sometimes I look in the eyes of those kids and think, nothing's there. Just robots. The lot of them." "My uncle's a soldier card," Ace said. "We hardly hear from him anymore, but my dad says it's because the Queen really wants the cards to be a single deck instead of individuals, like they all think with the same mind. He says it would only take 1 or 2 cards to start having opinions about how things should really be, and then those feelings would spread through the ranks. A slippery slope, he called it, means a very small number of outspoken cards can cause the whole house to fall." He raised an eyebrow at Chester, then read, "If one of the Wonderland kids crack, they all might." Red felt her heart beat a little bit faster as he spoke. Could she be understanding him correctly? Maybe Red had never wanted to be the leader of Wonderland, but leader of the rebels? That had a nice ring to it. "Interesting," Chester murmured. If one disgruntled soldier card could break the whole army, he glanced at Red. I wonder what an heir apparent could do. She said. But how could we pull off a real coup? Ace, you should see these kids at the fun parties, standing silently for hours, ignoring the cake and presents. They are in deep. That's it, Ace cried. What? His grin was devilish. We'll throw a party. Chester eyed him in surprise. A real party? Red asked. Not an unparty? I don't even know if that's been done in Wonderland before. That just might work, Chester said, rubbing his chin in thought. Have you heard of the ones they throw in Oregon? He spread his hands wide. Pizza, nachos, ice cream, the works. Loud music and dancing. You could do anything you want there. Red considered it wistfully. Oregon parties were nothing more than rumor, usually told in whispers by scandalized adults and soldier cards, but they were tantalizing. A party like that just might be enough to knock Wonderland off its feet. Where would we do it? Red asked. The gardens can hold most of Wonderland High, but we'd attract way too much attention there. We'd attract too much attention in a lot of places, Chester said. The gym at school is no good. Even though it's a nice size, I'm guessing your castle is out, Red. What about right here? Said Ace. The two others looked at him. Well, not right here, he clarified, but in the Royal Woods. The forest is deep enough that we wouldn't be seen from the road or the castle. I'm sure we could find a clearing where we could be as loud as we want. I like it, Chester said, a slow grin starting on his face. I think people will be more likely to enjoy themselves if they're far away from where the Queen or the soldier cards could find us. No offense, Red. None taken, she sighed. I agree. So it's settled, Ace said. We're doing this. Let's all brainstorm some ideas, and then we can start planning right away tomorrow after school. Let's, Red said. She grinned as they all shook hands to seal their pact. I have to head back, said Ace. He smiled at Red. It was nice meeting you, Princess. Red cleared her throat. You too, she said a little too brightly as he waved and headed off into the forest. I've got to go too, said Chester. But hey, Red. He pushed his floppy hair out of his face and looked a little sheepish. What is it? I underestimated you. I really wasn't sure if you'd climb out the window tonight or stick your soldier cards on us. It stung. Oh, come on, Red said quietly. They're not even my soldier cards. I know, Chester nodded, and I'm sorry. I mean, you're the Queen's daughter. But I was wrong. And Ace, he's played enough cards that he could tell who's bluffing and who's not. And it's clear to me that he trusts you. Red put her hands in the pockets of her leather jacket and willed herself not to blush. Well, thanks for that, she said. I want you to know you can trust me. I'm on your side, not my mom's. It felt unfamiliar to say, but this was the first time someone her age had been able to get past their first impression of Red. The words had come rushing out of her all at once. Fabulous, Chester said in an imitation of Mr. Maddox, and winked. I'll see you tomorrow, Princess. See you. A small smile played on Red's face as she watched him go. She had a hunch that such a party could cause a great deal of trouble, which was just the kind she was looking for.